the Loughborough estate. When one compares their openness, lightness, grass and trees, and carefully related changes of scale, from tall blocks to small blocks, with the prison-like courts of artisans' dwellings of earlier ages, one realizes some things are better than they were. Maybe it has no place for someone like me, but it gives one hope for modern architecture.
You're listening to Radio Loughborough. Stay tuned as we lift the lid on the Loughborough estate.
All right, so you've sent us a ton of stuff about Loughborough Estate Management Board, LEMB for short. We're talking internal documents, meeting minutes, financial reports, even personal stories from residents. And honestly, it's a bit of a mess.
Yeah, what really gets me is the difference between what LEMB promises in its estate charter and what residents are actually dealing with. It's a huge disconnect.
Like they're promising the moon and deliver, well, not much at all.
Right.
Right. The charter goes on about clean, safe spaces, quick repairs, community events, being transparent. But then you see the resident complaints, and it's a totally different story.
The pictures really highlight this, like that part in the charter about weekly dog bin emptying.
Right. It says litter and dog bins emptied every week, but the pictures tell a different story. Those bins are overflowing. Definitely not emptied weekly.
It's not just about aesthetics, though residents are dealing with some serious maintenance issues. Expensive parking repairs that never get done, mold leaks, things that make their homes really difficult to live in. And actually, the charter promised to address that expensive parking. It specifically mentions providing marked parking bays in the old Loughborough estate and benchmarking their services against other TMOs.
So what happened?
Residents say nothing's been done about the parking in the old estate. And on top of that, Loughborough estate has the priciest parking out of all the TMOs.
Talk about a broken promise. And what about those achievements? LEMB reports in their documents, new benches, more police patrols, CCTV installation. They make it sound impressive.
Except even those are disputed by residents. Some of these achievements even show up in reports from different years, word for word.
Really?
Yeah, it makes you wonder if they're just trying to make it look like they're doing something when they're not.
It's giving smoke and mirrors. And we can't forget the financial side. LEMB claims to be all about prudent financial management, but the numbers don't exactly back that up.
No, not at all. That spreadsheet you sent over is very telling. Board expenses have gone through the roof from just over £106,000 in 2018-19 to a massive £421,000 in 2022-23. Meanwhile, spending on important services like cleaning and grounds maintenance has barely budged.
So while the people in charge of LEMB are living it up, the estate itself seems to be falling apart.
It's a classic case of those in charge taking care of themselves while everyone else suffers. And that leads us to a really interesting part of this whole thing, a story that might shed some light on why LEMB seems so focused on lining their own pockets. We're talking about a missing boxing club, a dissolved residents association, and allegations of straight-up theft.
Okay, so this boxing club thing, it's a whole other story, isn't it? Let's start with LINTRA. Who were they and what were they doing on the estate?
Right, so LITRA stands for Loughborough Estate Tenants and Residents Association. They were formed back in 2012 to fill a gap left by the old management board, think community events, workshops, activities for residents, that kind of thing. They were really the heart of the estate.
And they started this boxing club.
Yeah, that was one of their projects. They secured funding, purchased equipment, everything a boxing club needs, and ran it out of a space on the estate called the Undercroft. They even had a Facebook page, the Loughborough Estate Boxing Club.
Sounds pretty successful. So what happened when LEMB took over in 2016? Did LITRA just hand over the reins?
Well, they disbanded as a formal organization, but they kept their remaining funds separate, and they held on to the boxing equipment. It was theirs. They had receipts, authorization for disposal, all above board, and actually Lambeth Council never asked them to hand those funds over.
And this is where the potential theft comes in.
Right. According to the documents you gave us, LEMB allegedly refused to let LITRA access their own equipment. They wanted LITRA to hand over the rest of their funds in exchange for it.
Seriously?
It gets worse. They allegedly went into the boxing club and completely trashed it. Then they turned around and claimed they had purchased all the equipment.
Hold on. They destroyed a perfectly good boxing club. What was their reasoning for that?
Honestly, there doesn't seem to be one LITRA members are convinced LEMB was just trying to steal their stuff, the equipment and the money. One resident even mentioned that the boxing club had been trashed and they found equipment under rubble. It's just Sad.
It's a serious accusation to make. Was there any proof to back up LEMB's claims that Leitra had stolen funds?
Nothing we've found in these documents.
Yeah.
If anything, it looks like LEMBU is trying to control the story, silence any dissent.
It gets worse, though, right? LEMB didn't stop at allegedly stealing from residents. There are allegations of slander and intimidation tactics, too.
Yeah, it's like they went into damage control mode and crossed a line. There's actually a recording from a public meeting where the chair of LEMB publicly accused former Leitra members of stealing funds. And get this, when those members joined a resident group that was critical of LEMB, they started getting threatening letters from LEMB officials.
Hold on. They threaten residents for speaking up? Like, what kind of threats?
Intimidation warnings that their actions could affect their tenancies, trying to scare them into silence. It's appalling. One resident who had taken pictures of something she was unhappy about was even accused in an email of being part of a white political group, which is absurd, especially considering her family is interracial.
Wow, they really went there. It sounds like they were trying to paint her as some kind of extremist just for raising concerns.
Exactly.
Yeah. It sounds like LEMB has a real problem with accountability. So we have a management board potentially stealing from residents, making false accusations, and then resorting to threats and intimidation when they're called out. It definitely seems like a pattern of abuse of power.
Absolutely. And that leads us to another very concerning question. How does someone with a criminal record end up in charge of gas safety on the estate?
Okay, let's get into this whole gas safety situation. The guy with the criminal record who is supposedly handling it, what's his story?
His name is Ronald Deaton. And, well, let's just say his past is a bit colorful. Back in 2015, he was convicted of defrauding a pensioner.
Really?
Yeah. Deaton took a cash deposit to install a driveway for this man's wife. She was battling cancer at the time and then just never did the work.
That's awful. So how does someone like that end up being put in charge of something as important as gas safety on a housing estate?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? It seems LEMB hired him under the name TriStar. But after his past came to light, both Deaton and TriStar vanished. And get this, Loughborough. Voices couldn't find any record of a company called TriStar. It's like they disappeared into thin air.
So not only was LEMB potentially employing someone with a criminal record, but it sounds like they might have been trying to hide it. And as if that wasn't enough, you mentioned something about residents claiming he was hiring unqualified workers for gas inspections and repairs.
Exactly. This is where things get really concerning in terms of resident safety. A former TriStar employee, let's call him Jake, blew the whistle on what was happening.
What did he say?
Well, Jake alleges that Deaton was bringing in these unqualified guys, paying them cash under the table and having them do gas work, even though they were clearly in over their heads.
Wait, are you saying that potentially unqualified people were going into residents' homes and messing with their gas appliances? That's terrifying. Did anyone even receive a proper gas safety certificate after these so-called inspections? This sounds incredibly dangerous.
That was Jake's main concern. He was worried that someone was going to get hurt. He even suggested that this might go beyond just Deaton, that there might be a whole syndicate at play.
Syndicate? Who else was supposedly involved?
Jake specifically named Deaton LEMB officials, and even a solicitor named DG. He believes they were all in on it, using the estate as their personal piggy bank.
Hold on a minute. A solicitor was involved too. Isn't that the same guy who sent that threatening legal letter to one of the residents we talked about earlier? The one who took the pictures?
That's right. His name is Adeji Sijuwada, also known as Deji. He's a senior partner at the firm that represents LEMB, and there's evidence to suggest he has some history with Digin. It really does seem like we're uncovering a whole network of individuals operating in the shadows, potentially profiting from the estate's decline.
This is unbelievable. So to recap, we have allegations of theft, intimidation, a convicted criminal handling gas safety, possibly unqualified workers, potential fraud, and what looks like a whole network of people taking advantage of residents. It's a lot to take in. But what about Lambeth Council? They're ultimately responsible for overseeing LEMB, aren't they? Where do they fit into all of this?
That's the most frustrating part of this whole story. Despite numerous complaints, freedom of information requests, even letters from the local MP, Lambeth Council has refused to take any real action or properly investigate LEMB. Their responses have been dismissive at best. It almost feels like they're deliberately ignoring what's happening.
But it's literally their job to make sure residents are getting the services they're paying for. They're supposed to hold LEMB accountable.
You would think so,
Yeah.
right? And that's why residents are so angry. They feel completely let down by the very people who are supposed to protect them. Remember those achievements that LEMB keeps bragging about?
Right, like they're doing everyone a big favor. What are residents doing about all of this? It sounds like they're trapped.
It is a classic case of power abuse.
Yeah.
And it raises serious questions about what happens when those in charge are basically allowed to do whatever they want. Right, so we're diving into some pretty heavy stuff today.
Yeah, when I saw these documents, I knew we had to talk about it.
Seriously, this situation with Mr. Baptiste and Loughborough Estate Management, it's
a lot.
It's a lot to unpack. We've got letters, emails, even descriptions of video footage.
You really went deep on this one.
Well, you know me, I had to get the full picture. And I think it's so important to understand what's going on here, with Mr. Baptiste and his experience on the Loughborough estate.
Absolutely, especially with his health issues. This isn't just about housing.
Exactly. So let's start with the basics. Who is Vincent Baptiste?
From everything you've gathered, it seems like he's a long-term resident at Loughborough Estate, there in Brixton.
Right, and while this was all going down, he was also dealing with cancer.
Which makes the whole thing even more difficult to hear about, honestly. Especially when you look at what he was dealing with in his flat.
Like that gas leak, right?
It's unbelievable. He reported the leak to Loughborough Estate Management, and they just nothing.
Ignored it. Essentially. Can you imagine the stress? Dealing with cancer and then a potential safety hazard in your own home?
And it gets worse.
Oh, there's more.
He ended up paying out of pocket to get the gas capped, just to be safe.
You're kidding? That's outrageous. They should be reimbursing him for that.
I agree. But it doesn't even stop there. His kitchen sink was broken for, get this, over a year.
A year? What was he doing without a sink?
He was washing dishes in his bathroom for months.
No way.
Yes, unfortunately. It's just
unacceptable.
Exactly. Especially for someone with a compromised immune system.
It's mind-boggling that they let it go on that long. And the worst part, when Mr. Baptiste tried to bring these issues to LEM's attention, the gas leak, the broken sink, all of it, they barred him from the housing office.
Because of bad language, they said.
Are you serious?
That's what the documents say.
I mean, I wasn't there, but if I was dealing with all that, I might have some bad language for them too.
Right. It feels like they weren't actually interested in addressing his concerns.
Exactly. Like they were trying to silence him rather than, actually fix the problems.
It definitely makes you wonder about their priorities.
So you have this already tense situation with Mr. Baptiste and LMB.
Right.
And then it all kind of explodes at this community fun day.
Yeah, the fun day.
You'd think a fun day would be, fun.
Yeah.
Not so much in this case.
Not this time. It really becomes kind of a turning point in this whole dispute between Mr. Baptiste and Loughborough Estate Management. This is where we first meet Ms. Edidoto.
Neighborhood Services Director.
Right.
And Mr. Eisbier.
The Health and Safety Coordinator.
Right.
Key players.
Yeah, and this is where the story gets really messy. We have Mr. Baptiste saying he was basically publicly attacked.
Right.
Berated. Threatened with eviction by LMD staff.
Including Ms. Edidoto, it sounds like.
Right. But then LMB claims Mr. Baptiste was the one causing trouble.
Harassing staff, they said.
So who do we believe?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we have to remember, everyone's coming at this with their own perspective. Mr. Baptiste, Ms. Edidoto, Mr. Eisbier, they're each going to have their own version of what went down.
Sure, but this is more than just he said, she said. These are serious accusations.
Absolutely.
And then there's this video you mentioned.
Oh, yes.
Of the incident.
Right. According to what you found, there's actually video footage of the fun day. And supposedly, it completely contradicts LM's side of the story.
Okay, now that's interesting.
Right. Talk about a plot twist.
And speaking of the full picture...
I'm going to what?
You don't need to come around here, you know that.
Mr. Baptist, the judge said you should not be coming here. You come again, so we're going to come to arrest you. So we're taking your
Where you taking phone for? What you doing that for? Why? Go, where you going?
I'm going about my business.
Look, go on then, we don't take that phone, does it? Go on, too much trouble. You cause too much trouble.
Baptist, let me tell you one thing. These people, they're doing more well in this council than you people. You people are the most dangerous people in this country. Police is coming to arrest you. You are arresting us? Hello, I heard the criminal here. This Mr. Listen, these people, they've done well in this council. Why are you people spoiling their name? Why are you arresting them? What's your problem? Why? You stay in jail. Why? These people, they've done well in this council. Protecting everyone. These people are giving them wrong name. Giving them wrong name. People should leave them alone. I promise you. And the amount you owe your rent arrears, I'll get you evicted. Promise me. We go to court. Alright? I'm back. You guys are on benefits.
Mr. Baptist, what are they doing to
What have they done to you? No, why are you featuring them? Why are you taking their pictures?
What did you do?
Why? Listen. Basically, they've got a court order on me. I'm going to get 2 years imprisonment.
So what are you doing?
I'm doing nothing. I'm just walking and going to Tesco's.
Did you take any pictures?
I'm allowed to. Right? Because basically they abuse me. Right?
So
basically, Piers,
yeah,
right, has left me in a situation with no kitchen.
Because I'm on the floor.
Yeah, no kitchen there.
Yeah.
Right? No ants and mice in my property here.
Yeah.
Right? Every time I go onto the street, this is what they do to me. I'm walking past minding my own business. I have a camera just in case they say anything. Now you see what they've done to me. Right? But nobody's going to back me up on this. Everybody's going to let them get away with what they've just done.
Because I didn't see what they have done, but
right? Everybody.
Taking pictures. Also, you have to take pictures with consent.
No. The law states that you are allowed to record anybody apart from children.
Okay.
Right? You're allowed to record. Right? Now, every time I walk past them, they abuse me, like they've just done now. Right? All I'm doing is walking past with my camera. Right? So that way now, right, I can prove that when I walk past there to go to Tesco's, they abuse me. Right? Now you see, they disabuse me for no reason. Call the police. They told me
They called the police.
they can't call the police because I've done nothing wrong. Right? They keep on saying that I'm not allowed there. I am allowed there.
Why are you not allowed there?
Because basically, right, they want me out of my property. Right? Sade, Peter and Piers have been fighting me for 3 years. I can't use my kitchen there. I've got to use my bathroom to wash my pots and pans up for 1.5 years. Right? They say it's all right. I've got mice and ants in my property, right? But I can't even make a cup of tea in the morning because I've got to wash down my kitchen first. These people know about it. They're doing nothing about it. All they're doing is harassing me. Piers the other day stole my phone. Stole my phone, right? Broke into it and then destroyed it. Because I started swearing at him, I got arrested there.
So do you have proof of the phone that you broke?
The proof there is Sade's paid the proof off. I had 3 witnesses at the day. These 3 witnesses don't want to say nothing now.
That's awful. It's like they're trying to humiliate him for speaking up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And let's not forget, this all started because Mr. Baptiste had legitimate concerns about his living conditions, concerns that seemed to ignore.
Right. A gas leak and a broken sink they wouldn't fix.
Exactly. So not only do they dismiss his concerns, but then they try to publicly shame him for trying to get those issues addressed. It's baffling. This whole thing started with, what, a gas leak, a broken sink, and now we're talking about possible abuse of power, lack of transparency, and this blatant disregard for residents' well-being.
And let's be clear, this isn't just about one person's experience with their housing. This situation shines a light on a much larger issue, a power dynamic that often exists between residents and those who are supposed to be looking out for them.
Right. It really makes you question who these systems are designed to serve.
It makes you think. It makes you realize that we have to stay vigilant, ask questions, and hold those in power accountable,
Absolutely, because everyone deserves to live in a safe and healthy home, and they deserve to have their voices heard, especially when it comes to something as essential as housing. Well, this has been quite the deep dive.
It really has.
I think it's safe to say there are still a lot of unanswered questions.
Yeah. It really throws a spotlight on a huge issue with TMOs, that potential for power to become unbalanced.
And what happens when it all goes wrong?
Oh.
Who do residents turn to? Because we've seen Gingerl try to get the council involved, and it hasn't exactly been smooth sailing.
No, not at all. And that's the tricky part. Councils, they have limited power when it comes to TMOs. They can offer support, funding, but they also have to make sure the TMOs are playing by the rules, being fair. In this case, well, it shows just how complicated that can get.
Like trying to unscramble an egg. And while everyone's arguing, it's the residents left in limbo, right?
It's a mess, no doubt. But it also highlights how important it is to have those checks and balances in place. Clear ways for residents to voice their concerns, to hold those in power accountable. Because let's be real, this isn't just about one estate in London. It speaks to a much bigger issue of how we govern our communities, how we make sure power is shared fairly. And maybe, just maybe, by talking about these issues, by shining a light on them, we can help spark some positive change. Not just on the Loughborough estate, but in communities facing similar struggles everywhere.
Here's hoping. That's it for this deep dive. Join us next time as we explore another intriguing corner of the internet.
The best songs on the radio. This is my only favorite station.